Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. You know that melody? Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Padahari. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Chinamani. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesha Sanyavadi Paschati Dastani. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Gauranga Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Haribol Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Haribol Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Haribo Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Hari Bolo Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hari Bolo Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Bol Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Haribo Haribo Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Gauranga Hare Rama Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Bolo Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Haribo Hare Krishna Hare Haribo Haribo Hare Rama Haribolo Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Haribo Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Gauranga Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Haribo Hare Krishna Haribo Haribo Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Haribo Haribo Rama Rama Jai Prabhupada Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Gauranga Hare Krishna Haribo Haribo Krishna Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Bolo Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Haribo, Haribo, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Bolo Haribo, Haribo, Hare Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Bolo Hare Radha Madha Mohan, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Haribo Haribo, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Bolo Bolo, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Madan Mohan, Hare Hare, Bolo Bolo, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Bolo! Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Govinda, Bolo! Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribo, Hare Hare Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Jaya Sindhu, Hare Hare, Dina Bandhu, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Daya Nidhi, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hari Bolo, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hari Bol, Hare Hare, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Rama Rama, Oh. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Govinda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Prabhupada, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. One more time. Hare Bola. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Haribo, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So let's sing again, one time, together. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Sri Radha Madan Mohan ji ki jai, Jai Go Premanandi, Shnubadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale, Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Shamaniti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve, Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Dasatarini. So it's actually by the grace of Satyadev that I'm here. Because I had asked Satyadev a question about meditation, because he teaches meditation workshops, and I wanted to know how he was teaching them, and then we got talking about what I was doing, and then he contacted our fearless leader, Sri Govinda Datta, to get me to come here as we were doing some corporate work, preaching in America, and I wanted to do something here. And so, by the divine arrangement of Krishna, I had come to Mexico, and then San Diego, Seattle, Vancouver, and then I'm going back to Mexico, and so we were able to come here on the way. Then I'm very happy to be here. I feel very at home here, because as many of you may know, or maybe you don't know, I came here in 1970 to help start the first Hare Krishna temple in San Jose, California. It was on 3rd Street or 3rd Avenue, I think it's street. It's a street that runs into the university or near the university, right by what was then downtown. I don't know, downtown's probably much bigger, but then the university and downtown, does that make sense? Still? But that downtown was just a bunch of little shops. And we would go out every day and do Harinam. And in 1970, when we go to the store to buy a quart of milk, it was 25 cents. How much is it now? How much now? What? Yeah. $4 for a quart? No, half gallon. $4 a gallon? Yeah. Maybe it was 25 cents a half quart, I don't know. It was cheap. And the only thing I remember from those days is that the lawn was yellow when we got our rented house, and I was told to water it every day and chant Sri Vishnu, Sri Vishnu, Sri Vishnu, and in 3 days it was green. So that's a little insight into gardening. And it's the first time I've been in the temple here, and it reminds me of Laguna Beach temple a bit. And I had the great fortune of, on my way from Mexico, stopping in the new Tijuana temple. I don't know if any of you know about it, but it's a nice temple and center where they're doing many wonderful things. And I also was part of the Tijuana temple in 1975 until I got arrested in Tijuana for distributing books, which was not very pleasant. But I was happy to be there. And then we went to San Diego, where I spent many years. And I was there when they installed the deities in San Diego, so that was very nice to go there. And then, now I get to come here, where I was in 1970, and I got to go to Vancouver, where I actually was a temple president in 1970. I was here in the summer, in the end of the summer, I ended up in Vancouver. So I've had a nice time visiting all these places. And then we were together in 1986 doing Sankirtan, and, right? Was it 86, do you remember? No, we came from San Diego, but we came here for the Christmas. We rented that house with Mahat Seva, you remember that? And I don't know if you were staying in the house or staying with your mother or something.
No, I was staying at
the house. Yeah. It was 1986, I think, wasn't it? So we were here for the Christmas marathon in 1986, and I was doing Sankirtan with one devotee who was formerly a thief, who became a devotee. So sometimes that happens. And so we went to some shopping centers, I don't know where, maybe it was here, Mountain View or something. And in those days we would go at lunchtime to McDonald's and Jack in the Box, and we were just collecting money, giving out Jagannath stickers or something. You go to one Jack in the Box, one McDonald's, one bank, you know, people lined up to go to the bank, so you'd get donations. And he came back laughing. I was waiting for him in the car, and he came back laughing, and he said, "All these stores here, where I was just collecting, I robbed them all last year." So these are my memories of San Jose. But I'll tell you a funny story about San Jose. I came here and we were living in an apartment, and then we got the rented house. And our schedule at the rented house was, we would go to bed by around midnight, and then we would get up around 6 o'clock and we'd start working to refurbish the temple. And we would work. And work, and work, and work, and work, and work. And after we finished working, we would work some more. And that would take us up. You're going to think this is a crazy schedule, and the reason you're going to think it's a crazy schedule is because it was a crazy schedule. And at 10 o'clock in the evening, after working all day, we got our first meal. And then we chanted our rounds. So if you've ever heard anyone say the Hare Krishnas were crazy in those days, they're absolutely correct. And that's how we started the first temple. Is that amazing? Chanting our rounds at 10, 11 o'clock at night after our first meal. Maybe some days he fed us breakfast, but I remember many days we just worked. And then we began preaching, but then I left and went to Vancouver. So, here we are for a short visit, and maybe we're trying to arrange to come back in the summer, spend more time in California. After so many years I've been away from here, since about 1990. I haven't really spent much time here. No, actually, 96. So, Sri Govinda Datta said, "What do you want to talk about?" And I said, "I want to talk about the problem that we all have." And he said, "What's the problem?" I said, "The problem is we don't live what the Shastra says we should be doing. If you asked an independent agency to study Prabhupada's books and then determine what a society would look like, how they would interact, how people would live based on that philosophy, it probably would look, they would conceive of it a little differently than what we see in our own lives and our own movement. What do you think? Yes? Yeah, so there's some dissonance there. You might call it dissonance between what the philosophy teaches and what we actually practice. And I would like to ask you all a question. Why do you think that is? Like, you know you should do something, but you don't always do it. And even sometimes you think you actually are doing it and you're not, which makes it really complicated. Right? Or sometimes you think, no, I do believe this and this is what I'm doing, when you're not doing it. So why is that? The $1 million question. Why? Why? You know the answer? The ocean of mercy knows the answer. He wants to give it. Keep it simple, Maya. One of the challenges that we face is sometimes we're not living it and we don't even recognize it. Now, I just did on my last 3 weeks, no, let's say the last 5 weeks, I did 3 workshops on marriage. And one of the things that we find about marriage, which is common inside ISKCON, outside ISKCON, inside any religious group outside, is that when people live together, they take one another for granted, and sometimes they don't treat one another well all the time. Sometimes they get upset easily, they nitpick, they nag, they complain, they criticize, and they're not always kind and gentle and loving, right? You notice that also? And what I find interesting, but of course a little upsetting or sad, is that those who are practicing spiritual life in Krishna consciousness are meant to exhibit so many wonderful qualities, yes? Like kindness and humility and service and selflessness, etc., etc. And one would think, or one would assume, at least from an academic point of view, that people who practice bhakti, who manifest or are supposed to manifest those qualities, would be the ideal husbands and wives. Right? If you practice bhakti, you would think you would be the perfect gentleman, the perfect lady. And everyone in the world would line up at your door and say, will you marry me? You're a bhakta. You're humble. You're kind. You're compassionate. You serve. You're not you're not selfish. Right? I mean, you could make that argument if you didn't know the reality. If you were deaf, dumb, and blind and didn't know what was going on, you would probably think that way if no one told you. But the fact is often much different in reality, that the marriages are often not better, and unfortunately they're often worse. And unfortunately they're often worse in higher degrees than those outside of the Hare Krishna movement. Which is very interesting it's a very interesting, I mean, you could do a PhD on this, right? They have one PhD on, he can go back and do his PhD on this. How can a philosophy which has ideals here end up practically somewhere else? Now, I'm not saying this always happens, but this is one example. I travel a lot, and sometimes I go to temples, and someone says, Prabhu, can I talk to you? What do you think they want to talk to me about? Take a wild guess. But which kind of problems? What? Conjugal, marriage. Marriage problems? Yes. Relationships? Yes. Very common. Again, you would think here's an organization that has a philosophy based on service, humility, which is the essence of the philosophy, and every day in every temple they chant this verse, Trinadapi Sunichena. You would think that would do it, right? Just that verse alone would solve all problems of relationships. But it doesn't. Why? Why doesn't it? That's the big question. Why doesn't it? Why is the philosophy alone not doing it? Is there something wrong with the way we're taking it? Is this normal? Is there something wrong with us? Partly, yeah. Way. Oh yeah. You might not actually be doing devotional service. It may look like it. We may not be humble, yes. So, this is a good point. So, how can a person who lives within an organization, who believes in a philosophy which is based on service and humility, not be humble? It doesn't make sense, does it? I mean, we know it makes sense because we're struggling with it ourselves. But from a certain perspective, it doesn't make sense. Here's a philosophy, here's a practice. Every page talks about service, humility, cooperation. But we can see we all have our natures. And our natures may not be congruent or aligned with the teachings. And then we get the teachings and they go here. This is where they go first, right? Have you noticed that? They hit here first. And then some of that trickles down to here and some of it stays up here. Have you noticed that? And another thing that I've noticed, I don't know if you've noticed this, another thing I've noticed is that when you see examples of that quality, it goes right over the head and straight into the heart. It bypasses intellect, information, and it goes straight to the heart. When you see another devotee exhibiting humility, service, cooperation, you get a little inspired to do the same. The opposite is true, isn't it? When somebody is pushing your buttons because of their pride, you might react with a little more pride. But when somebody's approaching you humbly, we tend to be humbled by it, isn't it? Like often there's a fear that if somebody is served too much or honored too much, it'll be bad for them. But in many cases, it makes them more humble. If they're advanced, and the more they're served, the more they feel unqualified. And when we see that kind of behavior, we feel like that. So there's definitely a reality in which information does not always translate into realization or action or transformation. Or even realization that I don't have the realization. It doesn't always translate into that. And that is the challenge. And the reason that this concerns me is because it came up many years ago for me when I began teaching classes in forgiveness. And I had a very big issue with my own resentment. Because as some of you may know, in the mid-'80s, some of our leaders left. And it left a huge vacuum in the lives of many devotees in many temples. And I was working as one of the main managers or leaders in one of the temples in which one of those persons left. Actually, twice it happened. One temple we had to close because that person left, and that was I was the president there, and so that was I left. I went to another country, and I couldn't stay because there was no temple. It couldn't be maintained because we had lost so many devotees. And then 4 years later, it happened again. And so I was very bitter because I felt that these people lacked the integrity to maintain their position, and it was unfair, unjust, and they didn't even try to get help or try to work it out. And then I went through a little bit of forgiveness 18 years later. I was actually upset for 18 years, and by Krishna's arrangement, I went through, by accident, somebody helped me forgive them. And it really changed my attitude towards this person. And I had a realization, a very interesting realization, that when this person left ISKCON, the second one, in 1986, when he left, all he did was send a letter. He'd already gone, he didn't tell anybody. We just got a letter that I've left. You know, I'm working with this person like every day. He doesn't tell you. Actually, I didn't tell you about another person who left. I was actually involved in working on 3 projects, and they all left. And none of them told me. I'm leaving, you know, let's talk about it, make the changes, slowly we'll shift, none of that. And then after finally forgiving him, I had a realization. Krishna revealed to me. He said, do you realize that this person who left took sannyas at the age of 26, became guru? No, I think he took sannyas at 25, after being a devotee 5 years, less than 5, 4.5. Took sannyas at 25, and at 26 he became a guru. And that's difficult, right? He's 26, he's a guru. His female disciples are 25, 24, 23, 28. Is that hard? That's not easy, is it? And he showed me letters they wrote him. He said, I'm going crazy. He said, Dear Guru Maharaj, I surrender to you body, mind, and soul. So for a 26-year-old man to get a letter from a beautiful young woman that says, I surrender to you body, mind, and soul, it's not easy. So Krishna revealed to me that when he left, I should have written him and said, I completely understand. Is there anything I can do to support you? That's what I should have done, but I didn't. I remained bitter. And so 18 years later, 19, even 20 years later, I only realized this is how I should have reacted because I started teaching about forgiveness. And so lights went on in my head. I said, look at how you acted. You're a devotee, and you were bitter for 20 years. Now, it gets even better. I met this devotee at Rath Yatra in 2010. This is the first time I saw him since he left in 1986. So how many years is that? 24 years, right? And he only says 2 things. Now, I was very let down when he left because he didn't tell me. So there was a thing about, it was a trust issue. And he tells me 2 things, and then he puts his head down. He says, please forgive me. I know I let you down. Which means the day he left, he was regretful. The very day. I didn't know that, but the day he left, he was regretful. And the day he left, I was bitter. And the whole time he was regretful, and I was bitter. Isn't that a paradox? And I was, quote unquote, a leader in the temple. And probably you could say I was somewhat of a leader in ISKCON, just by default, because I joined so early on. And I didn't leave. So by default, you get, you get upgraded because so many people leave. If you stick around long enough, you'll have 1,000 disciples. So it was such a contradiction in the way I acted. I should have acted one way, I acted another way. And then I began teaching forgiveness workshops because I was inspired by what I had realized. And especially I was inspired by the fact that once I forgave, any negativity I had towards him or the other leaders, it went away. And it enabled me to be more positive about getting into spreading Krishna consciousness without feeling this fear that maybe another leader will leave. Because we're talking about 3 people. So you could understand I was a little concerned about giving my heart to another project. But after I forgave, then it all went away. And I said, I need to teach this because there's so many devotees that feel like I feel. So then I began teaching it, and all of a sudden, as a teacher, I started hearing the stories that devotees had with their issues of resentment. And some of them were stories from their childhood, and they had been, some of the workshops I didn't say devotees at that point had been devotees 35 years. And they're talking about when they were 12 years old, this happened, and it's still affecting them today. And it opened up a whole reality to me that behind the scenes of the happy Hare Krishnas eating pakoras and jumping up and down, there's a lot of stuff going on inside that we don't hear about. And I was seeing it all because in this workshop we encourage people to talk about it, and then they confide in me also. So then that brought me to an interesting realization which I shared with the devotees in the workshop, and I said, technically speaking, there should not be a market in the Hare Krishna movement for a workshop on forgiveness because we believe in karma. And if you believe in karma, you understand that anything bad that happens to you is a result of your action. That's clear. I mean, we all understand that, right? But we have people sitting in the room thinking this person hurt me and they're blaming. And that is not congruent with our understanding of karma. So I would joke a little bit with them and say, you know, none of you should be here because you all believe in karma, but you're here dealing with your issue. What does this tell us? This tells us that what we know and what's going on inside are not always the same. Yeah. And like lights were going on, you know, when I started teaching. You know, I've taught the workshop many times, so lights started going on after the 5th or 6th time. And so I had done it in different places, not just America, outside America. And very senior devotees sometimes would come and be very upset. And they would be full of a lot of stuff, especially in regards to leaders, past leaders. So then somebody sent me something which even shed more light on it. This was like the icing on the cake of this whole process I was going through as a teacher. Just watching this in place after place after place. And even God Brothers writing me and saying, I'm having issues with this devotee, what do I do? I mean, it's so common, I get it all the time. Someone sent me a little detail on the story of the Amish people who in, I think it was 2002, there was a murder in their community. And what actually happened was, I think there were like, I don't know, maybe 10 boys, 10 girls. But anyway, the guy came in to the classroom with a gun, and he had all the boys leave, and he shot all the girls. And 5 of them died, or 5 or 6 died. And then that evening, 2 or 3 of the families went to the wife of the murderer. Now that man who killed the girls also killed himself. So they were feeling that this woman is very distraught, that her husband has just killed 5 young girls and killed himself. So they went and they said, we forgive your husband for what he's done, and this is the same night. This is the evening of that day. And, which is amazing, and even more amazing, is they said, we will take care of you. You can live in our community and we will take care of you. Amazing, right? So then I ask devotees in every workshop I go to, I tell them the story and I ask devotees a question. Prabhus, Matajis, if this happened in one of our schools, would we do this? To which the answer, unanimously in every place I went, is no, except one person said yes, but I don't think he understood the question. I only got one yes in like 25 workshops. He didn't understand the question. And when everybody said no, it was like cold shock waves hit everybody because they realized that we have a philosophy, and this is only one aspect of our philosophy. So what about all the other aspects? You know? So then it gets even better. So then in this description, a devotee sent me a sermon that took place in Westminster Abbey about this event. And the person said, he said, "Isn't it amazing that they didn't even have to think about it, they just did it?" Now, you could imagine, let's get practical here. Let's say it happened. Let's say we had a school here and it happened. Then we're having a meeting. How should we react? And you know what happens when you have meetings, especially in the Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama 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 movement. It's hard to come to agreement. And so we postpone the meeting. We didn't come to agreement. So we'll meet again, let's think about it, we'll talk about it. But then it's time for the next meeting, and of course somebody's busy, and this happened, and the kid's sick, and so it's later, and then, of course, then we're going to India, so we'll have the meeting later, So then it's like 3 months later, and you're still, what are we meeting about? Oh, should we forgive? No, it's 3 months anyway, why bother? I mean, it sounds funny, but that is likely could happen, right? So he's making the point that they didn't have a meeting. The decision was automatic because they are people who forgive. And he said it wasn't a decision, it was who they are as people. Because who you are, you don't have to decide, right? Isn't it? If this is who you are, if you're a forgiving person, then you don't make a decision to forgive. That's just what you do, because that's who you are. If you're a nice person, you act nicely. If you're not a nice person, then you act another way. So after I got this, it shed even more light on it, because now we had examples of people who are doing things that we aren't doing, and this sermon clarified why they were doing it. It says because there was no difference between what they believed and who they are. So then that opened a whole other realm of my thought process, of like, okay, we have a real challenge here. We can jump up and down and eat pakoras. We're good at that. But, when you walk out the door, that's when the rubber hits the road, That's when all this stuff is meant to be applied. And if we fail there, we're failing. And we know in the Hare Krishna movement that sometimes relationships are not as good as they should be. And relationships is where all the humility comes in, all the patience, all the tolerance, all that good stuff, right? That's where it comes in. All the service, all the selflessness, it all comes in relationships, which smooths out relationships. So then, taking this, I had another realization. And I realized that in so many ways in my life, I did not act properly, but I did not even recognize I was not acting properly. I always thought I was justified. Does that make sense? Like I have a right to act this way because of the way someone treated me. And what happens in my preaching or my teaching as I travel to different places, I always get questions where devotees will say, "This happened, what should I do?" And I joke with them. And I say things like, "Well, I think you should commit suicide." Or I'll say, "This person treated me this way and they lied behind my back and then this happened and then that happened. So what should I do?" Or I'll joke, I say, "Well, why don't you get a hammer, find that person, when he's not looking, just hit him in the head." So why do I say that? Because I feel like inherent in the question is this idea, am I justified in acting in a way which is not ordained in Shastra? But the people asking it are not conscious that that's what they're saying. So I'm trying to make them conscious. So I'll joke and say, "Well, if I were you, I'd get a knife and I'd just cut his head off." Because I know that's how they feel. That's how they feel. So then I take it to this level. I say, let us understand that we have a standard. This is the way a devotee behaves. And even if you don't feel like behaving that way, you act that way anyway because it's the right way to act. If you wait to act that way till you feel like acting that way, you may never act that way. But so you act, "Well, how come you didn't get up early in the morning?" "I didn't feel like it." Well, if you wait till you feel like it, it might not happen. But there's an order. You should get up by this time. So that's why you do it. So, we are thinking, the devotees who are asking these questions are thinking there's justification for acting in ways that aren't Krishna consciousness if we are not treated properly. That's inherent in the question, what should I do? Does that make sense? Otherwise, I would, see, I'm joking with them, I say, why are you asking what I should do? Isn't it explained in every page of the Bhagavad Gita? You think now you have a right to act in a different way, and there's no karma because this is how I was treated? And so, what are the examples we have in our own scriptures? Ambarish Maharaj. Durvasa Muni tries to kill him. He doesn't retaliate. Prahlad Maharaj, his father tries to kill him. He doesn't retaliate. Okay, this is very high level, but there's a principle there. Not only do they not retaliate, they're always praying. Takaharidas is being beaten, and he's praying for the people who are beating him that they won't have to suffer for beating him. So if anyone has an excuse to be mad, it's them. But this is the example that we get in our scripture. Now, another thing that's really cool, should I tell you? It's really cool. It's actually not cool, it's really sad, but it's cool as a philosophical discussion, sad as a reality. And that I started doing these marriage workshops, and one of the things that I teach in marriage workshops is something which goes very contrary to what we normally hear in ISKCON. And what do we normally hear? Well, the wife should be submissive and just do whatever the man wants. So I teach the man should be submissive and do whatever the wife wants, which is, you know, wives are happy about that, but the men, they're not so happy about it, are they? Are they? You guys happy about that? You like that? I completely forgot what I was going to say. It was the realization I had. What was I saying before about the sad thing about? Very cool. Yeah, that's what I can't remember. It has to do with Grihastha life. What? Men don't hear? No. Let me think. What is it? Oh yeah, it's basically this idea. This idea that I'll remember, but it's around this idea that in doing these workshops on Grihastha life and becoming aware of all the problems in the Grihastha community, that I would find that many, especially men more so than women were more reactive to men's behavior, but men would be acting in ways which are very dictatorial, dominating, not emotionally supporting their wives and so forth, which have nothing to do with what's in our scripture. And, oh, here, I remember, I'm not that bad. The things, you know, there's spaces, but they reconnect. The interesting thing is, like when I talk about this with men, that, you know, you should give full emotional support to your wife, you should be extremely patient with her. They're going, yeah, but my wife, you know, I come home and she's like all upset about this and that, and I see that, I just go into the room and close the door, you know, I'm scared. I say, no, you have to deal with it. That's what it means to be a husband, right? You have to deal with it. You have, no, but she spends so much money. Now he's at the mall shopping, you know. It's like, no, that's what women do. You know, if they don't shop, the economy falls apart, you know. So you won't have a job if the women don't shop. So don't worry about it, right? So, you know, and on and on and on like that. And they go, yeah, but the husband, you know, the wife's just supposed to do what he is. The husband's a guru, this or that, you know, on and on, you know. And then I say, but look in the Bhagavatam. You say, yeah, I look in the Bhagavatam, it says women this and that. No. Look at the stories of husbands and wives. And what do you see? Kardama Muni builds his wife an aerial mansion. You're getting off light, Prabhu. You only have to give her a house and one car. You don't have to build an aerial mansion. You couldn't do it anyway, but he's doing more for his wife than you're doing for yours, right? I mean, he spent all those years doing mystic yoga. He was working harder than you were working at Google or Intel or Cisco. He did a lot more tapasya, so he could do that for his wife. And then just go through every relationship in the Bhagavatam between proper devotee and husband and wife. Priyavrata Maharaj. He didn't even want to get married, and he was like this ideal husband. Like, you think, okay, you marry a guy who doesn't want to get married, your guru says, Prabhu, marry this lady. I don't want to get married, Maharaj. Marry her. I don't want to get married. I don't like women. Marry her. I don't like kids. Marry her. And the ladies listening to that go, I don't want to marry this guy. He doesn't like women. He doesn't like kids. You would think like that, right? But in the Shastra it describes Priyavrata was the ideal husband. He was perfect. Took care of his wife, took care of his kids. He did it because he was told to do it, and he did it out of duty. So if you're looking, for a way out of this and, an excuse not to be a good husband, that would have been it. A guy who's forced to get married who doesn't want to, because, after you marry your wife and realize what she's like, you may say, honey, if I knew it was going to be like this, I wouldn't have done it. And now you have your excuse, for being a bad husband. But there's no substance for this. There's no support for this in our scripture. All you find in scripture is these examples of like husbands who take care of wives who are nice. They're not screaming and yelling. They're supporting. I mean, you have Chaivana Muni, but he's not a devotee, right? And so Bari Muni, they're not devotees. They're sages, but they're not devotees. So I found it so interesting that because of our nature, or the nature of many of us, when we read those stories, it doesn't mean anything to us. It doesn't mean like, oh, I'm supposed to be a good husband. Oh, I'm supposed to do this and that. It just goes zoop, zoop. As fast as it goes in, it goes out. Why do you think that is? Who would like to guess? For one free gulab jamun, who would like to guess? Because it's a mindset already. And therefore, when you read the story, because that's your mindset and you want to keep it, you don't even realize you read the story. And you see something totally different in the story than what actually happened. Isn't that interesting? I find it amazing that that happens. And the wife's reading it going, hey, look at this. This is what a husband's supposed to be. He reads it and he's like, hey, look at this. This is what a wife's supposed to be. They both miss it, isn't it? Do you notice that? If that's your mindset, you want to change your husband, you'll read it in terms of what the husband's supposed to be. If you want to change your wife, you'll read it in terms of what the wife is supposed to be. You won't read it in terms of what you're supposed to be. So this was my, realization in the last few years of teaching and these workshops. And then concluding, oh, okay, one more thing. This was like the icing on the cake. We had touched upon it a little bit, but the icing on the cake was this travel to the different temples. Prabhu, can I talk to you? I'm having a lot of trouble with him. He's really bad. I can't work with him. Then him comes. Can I talk to you? I'm really trouble with him. He's really bad. I can't work. You get total opposite reports. Like, I'm like an angel, and this guy's a villain, and I just can't work with him. Then you talk to the villain. I'm an angel, and he's a villain. And this is common. It's not isolated. It's common. And I'm looking at this and going, wait a minute. We have all these good examples. We have all these good philosophy. We are encouraged with all these good qualities. How did we end up like this? And then I realized something. That some of us have Krishna consciousness as a religion, but not actually as a way of life. So our way of life just stays the same. And then we go, Hari Hari Bol, and pass the pakoras. And then we go out and we stay the same. So the religion that could change the world is having trouble changing the people that are in it, what to speak of the people who are out of it. And my personal realization was that we never change until there's a day that we say, I'm sick of being the way I am and I want to change. I want to be a sadhu. I want to be more advanced. I want to be better. At that point, we start changing. And at that point, when you read everything in the scripture, like, oh, that's what it says. Yes. Now, another experience I had in this evolution, which was really good for my relationship with my wife, is that I realized that every time there was friction, it was just Krishna giving me an opportunity to practice more tolerance, more patience, more humility, whatever it was. Now, men don't like it when their wives tell them, honey, you know, what you said yesterday when we were, dinner at my mother's house, that was really bad. You always do that. And that was like, it really freaked her out. And I'm like embarrassed to bring you next time. And it's like, you just act like a 14-year-old. I just know, I was really disgusted. I can't take it. And you're sitting there going, oh my God. Right? Yes? You're not sitting there thinking, which you should be thinking, Krishna is testing me now. Testing my ego, testing my tolerance, testing my... That's how we should be thinking, because that's true. It's 100% true. And when you think that way, well, you will only think that way if you actually want to practice those qualities. If you actually think it's good because somebody's telling me this, this is good because it keeps me humble. Isn't it? We want people to tell them, Prabhu, you are number one. You are so good. I can't believe it. And you're like, yeah. You don't have to say that, Prabhu. I'm not. It's okay, I mean, I know I'm good, but I'm not that good. And you're eating it up like cherry pie. Yeah, and you're pretending like, no, you're good, Prabhu. I'm just a worm and stool, really. And you're just eating it up. You're just licking it up like chocolate ice cream, right? And pretending you're not. Right? But when somebody comes and says, I don't like what you said, it wasn't proper. You're not licking that up at all. You're spitting that out back at them. But the day that you realize that humility is the jewel of bhakti, you'll be able to sit there and go and say to your wife or your associate, thank you for saying that. That's purifying, it's humbling, and I needed that. You'll take it that way. So ultimately, all conflict is a lack of Krishna consciousness. Yes, ultimately. So I saw in my own life how when there would be difficulty in my relation, not difficulty in my relationship, but in some interactions now and then, if I just remembered, okay, Krishna, my wife just said something that upset me. Innocent, she just said something innocently. It didn't make sense to me. It didn't hit me right. Now you're watching me and you're looking at, what are you going to do now? Yeah, you're Mahatma Das. You're the big teacher of humility and tolerance. What are you going to do now, Mahatma Das? Tell you what I feel like doing now, Krishna. I feel like getting mad. But since you asked and you're looking at what I'm going to do, I think I better behave properly. Because that's what you want me to do, right? So when I remember that, then I see every opportunity as something good. Every bit of friction gives me an opportunity to smooth it out. Every time I do something wrong and it's pointed out, it's an opportunity to say, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. Wow. And ladies, for men to say, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that, that's like huge. That could take like 4,567 lifetimes before they come to that. Isn't it, guys? Say, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. But that's Krishna consciousness. That's what it is. So, that's what brought us to the title of this class. Are you living what you believe? Is that the name of it? Yeah. And I'll go back to my original premise. That's our challenge. That is our challenge, to live what we believe. Not just to learn shlokas, not just to read the verses, not just even to discuss it, but actually get to the point where you're living it. And when we live it, then we become personifications of what we're teaching, and that is the best way we can to make other people Krishna conscious. And my final realization, Shri Sri Radha Madan Mohan Ki Jai. My final realization was quite discouraging. And this realization came to me when I was giving class about this topic or something similar. And then I realized that if we come into a society of devotees and we don't try to change ourselves, then we're bringing from the outside things which don't belong inside. And so externally inside, we have some principles and culture and etiquette, but we're creating a new culture by bringing in the culture from the outside, or how we were brought up, or our values, some which may not be Krishna conscious, and we bring them inside into the group. Then what happens? This is a reality I don't know if you're aware of, but it's a very unfortunate reality, that sometimes people will come to the Hare Krishna movement and they'll learn bad qualities. They'll learn to gossip and criticize, and they'll say, you know, before as a devotee, I really didn't gossip and criticize. I learned that in ISKCON. So what could be worse than that? I used to have good relationships, but now there's so much politics and this. You know, what could be worse than that? So what's happening is we're bringing the stuff from outside, and we're bringing it inside. No, that stuff is supposed to stay outside. Or if we bring it inside, we're supposed to give it up and become purified. So when I realized that was happening, then I understood that we have a culture that we have to be consciously creating. And if we're not consciously trying to create a culture of service, appreciation, humility, and so forth, then the culture from the outside of who we are as conditioned beings starts to predominate within the society. And then people come here and I go like, you say this, but I saw this person do that. Could you explain that? And of course you can't explain it, because there is no explanation. Right? So it's important for us to realize the greatest sharing, preaching, helping, however you want to frame that word, that we can do is to be what Prabhupada teaches us. And that is a huge challenge. And all I can say is it's not going to happen until we want it. And by our advancement in Krishna consciousness, we should develop the desire. And when we develop the desire, it will happen. And we should help one another. And how do we do it? Very important principle. Even if you don't feel like it, do it. Act properly even if you don't feel like it. Don't wait to feel like it to act, because you could be waiting a long time. So, does anyone have any questions or comments or objections?
I don't usually speak, but I do have an objection.
Jai Haribol. Objections. Then I can say, objection overruled.
How can I say this humbly? That's good. This one doesn't work.
With all due respect to you, Prabhu, I think what you said is a bunch of nonsense.
No, I think for the most part, not for the most part, for everything, the essence of what you said is obviously true. I just want to say something about peer pressure, and I don't fall under peer pressure, and that's why I'm standing up here. So you might test your humility and tolerance here. And that is the story of the Amish. I do not accept that devotees, because I would be one of them that does understand the concept. I would be one that would go to that wife and say, and the way you mentioned it, you said it in such a way that everyone, hands down, except one person, but I don't think he understood the question, is peer pressure. It's total peer pressure, and I think the peer pressure was given probably from the day you did it. You know, that maybe that's what you feel, but I don't feel that. I feel that there's a lot of people and devotees that would not think that that would be an improper thing to do.
I would be happy if that's true.
Well, I'm sure it is.
I'll accept that. And when I present it in the future, I'll try not to sway their consciousness. I would be very happy to know that that's true. I would be delighted.
Anyway, secondly,
yes.
I've been reading about Freud.
You've been reading about Freud.
Yeah, and psychoanalysis. And I think a lot of actually some of the problems we talk about, you were saying, even if we don't feel like it, do the right thing. So I'm a little confused exactly what Maya is and what our childhood experiences and how it's developed into how we react to certain things now is. You know, Maya and our karma is from past lives even, but then our childhood, you know, has a certain effect on how we react to certain things now.
Yes.
So I can't really say more than that, except the fact that sometimes it's impossible
for some people
to do what is the right thing. Even, not impossible,
difficult.
But very difficult.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's a lot to this, and that's why when you asked right in the beginning, I said there's a lot of reasons why devotees are not
okay.
living the life as they should.
Let's talk about that last point, because it's valid and it's true that conditioning is very deep, and for some people it's deeper than others. What I can say from experience is that the desire to change is fundamental. Now, whether you can change in a day or a lifetime or 10 is another thing. But as long as the desire, at least this is my study of human psyche, as long as the desire is there, that's the pivotal point. That nobody can change. And even in Bhagavatam, it's there. Even Krishna can't change you if you don't want to. Matirna Krishna Parata Satoba. So we have that verse. My experience as being a devotee is that for so many years I didn't want to change certain things about me, and at one point something happened and I shifted. And I attributed that to just the fact that I made enough advancement that certain qualities became attractive to me. It's like, and I became a little frustrated that after all these years I wasn't manifesting them. But up to that point, I didn't even honestly know that I wasn't manifesting them, and I didn't really care. And I thought I was okay. And at that point where the desire developed to manifest, maybe a little more humility than normal, I saw a shift in my consciousness. And humility started becoming attractive. And so if somebody criticized me, it stopped bothering me because I said, well, this is good. So I think the process of Krishna consciousness can bring us to that platform. But if we think we can't change, then we can't. It's, you know, but I grant the fact that it's going to be more difficult for others. But I've done a lot of work in the self-development world, so I've seen some pretty bad people come around from some pretty bad situations. A lot of them, they hit such a low level, it was just like, they shot. That's what it took to change them. So, but it's going to be different for different people. That's my personalization and my study of the topic. That's the pivotal point. Then you don't give up, even if you keep falling. You keep going.
The point being hitting bottom.
You want to do it, and even you fail, you never give up because of that desire. And so it's like this. You know, it's a little bit like that, instead of like this. At least that's my experience.
I was just also thinking of one thing, sort of related on the whole point of praise and humility, and that is well, I'm pretty sure this is a correct quote, but anyway, that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said that he who praises me is my enemy, and he who criticizes me is my friend.
Yes. So
I've always thought about that very seriously.
Yeah. If we can live that, it's wonderful. It's so important. I think we've all been in situations where somebody is doing something wrong, and everybody says, how are we going to tell them? And then in the discussion you say, nobody can tell him because he won't admit it. But he's a leader and he's doing something wrong, and he has to be told. So what a virtue it is, and how easy it makes it for all of us if he's the kind of person we can go to and point out a mistake, and he'll say, thank you for pointing that out. I'll try my best to change. That makes working together very easy. And I would like to see someday in our movement that becomes a prerequisite for anyone to take a leadership role, that they have to agree to be open in some system, in some way, for correction or suggestion, and act on it, because that makes harmoniously working together better. And then it follows our principle of humility. Rather than talk about it theoretically, let's see if we can, create in our culture a system within our management and interrelationships that these things are necessary. Like in Chaupati, we have the example where, Radhanath Swami saw friction between householders and grihastas, and then he wouldn't allow any man to live in the temple if they criticized the grihastas. He just had to make a principle based on, he had to make a rule based on a principle. I think that's great. You know, these are the principles, so let's make rules how we interact, so we can work better together. Yes, is that okay?
Yeah, no, great answer.
Thank you.
I do have something else to say.
Prabhu, you were talking about this devotee left, and then you met the devotee in 2010 during the Rath Yatra, and you were mentioning that how the devotee was very regretful ever since he left. So I kind of feel...
You have another microphone.
I kind of feel empathy for that devotee, because in one sense, I also feel regretful for some of the experiences I have had in my life. And I'm thinking, and ever since then, I've been trying to forgive myself for what I've done.
Right.
So if you could give some tips or
how do
some
you
wisdom on how to forgive
oneself. We had many discussions on that today at the workshop, at the one at Intel, and one or two at Intel, and one or two at Google. This is my understanding. I mean, I have written about this, thought about this, and there's many angles to approach it. And I'll just give a little synopsis. To be able to forgive oneself is necessary if you want to move forward in your life, no matter what you've done. And if we look at it from a philosophical perspective, not forgiving oneself is actually a symptom of ignorance, because it holds you down. So anything that holds us down is tamagun. And you might say, but how can I forgive myself? Wouldn't that be more sattvic to not forgive myself, because what I did was wrong? But you have to look at the outcome. If the outcome of not forgiving yourself is it handicaps you, that's symptomatic of ignorance. If it's sattva, it moves you forward, right? So keep that in mind, and I'll mention a few other points. Or in other words, I could say, it's actually not Krishna conscious to not forgive yourself, because it holds you back. And if it holds you back from Krishna, that's wrong, right? Like, you say, Krishna says to you, he says, I'm waiting for you to become Krishna conscious. And you say, I can't. And he says, why? Because I can't forgive myself. And he says, but by not forgiving yourself, then you deny me of the relationship that I want to have with you. So then you think, okay, I guess if I forgive myself, I can move forward in my Krishna consciousness. So that will be pleasing to Krishna. And bhakti is about pleasing Krishna, so that's what I should do. So that's just the philosophical side. The more psychological side of it is that generally not being able to forgive oneself has two or three causes. One being that as growing up you were made to feel bad. And then so that not forgiving is just a repetition of what you heard. It's not actually your mind or voice, it's your mother's or father's or teachers or brothers or those people who put you down. In any kind of environment you've been in that is very negative will cause you to do that, because you'll hear all that negativity and you'll think, I'm not good enough, and what I did proves I'm not good enough. And sometimes you'll get reinforcements from people around you confirming your own doubt that what you did is wrong, and you're suffering today because of that, and that confirms how bad it is, and then you feel worse. Now, what's important to understand, which distinguishes healthy guilt from unhealthy guilt, is that healthy guilt will push you forward and unhealthy guilt will keep you down. So again, healthy guilt would be tamagun. Can you sit that way? Yeah. Thank you. So healthy guilt would be sattvic, because healthy guilt will make you feel bad that you did it, but it will inspire you to improve. So I did this is wrong, I learned this lesson, I'm not going to do it again. That's what we would call remorse. You feel bad enough that you want to improve. Unhealthy guilt is just, I feel bad, and I'm depressed. What are you doing about it? I'm just more depression. So that's the mode of ignorance. So depression will come in the mode of ignorance. So we have to see it that way. And then the other cause of that, one of the other major causes, is that if a person has the nature of a perfectionist, then they can never be satisfied that they're good enough. whether it's their own samskaras, personality type, or they got that from other people, that you're not good enough. As long as you feel that whatever you're doing is not good enough, which usually comes from having this perfectionist nature, you have an extremely difficult time forgiving yourself because you'll never be perfect. And if you need to be perfect, and you're never perfect, you'll always feel that you can't forgive yourself. And that's just indicative of the perfectionist mentality. So there's a healthy perfectionist and there's an unhealthy perfectionist. I have no problem with anyone being a perfectionist. I wish I were more of a perfectionist in many ways of my life. The problem is that when it drives you crazy, right? So I'm a perfectionist, so I try to do things really well and perfect. But I don't always do them perfect and well. Maybe I don't have the time, maybe I don't have the skill or knowledge. So if I'm a healthy perfectionist, it's like, okay, I did the best I could with this circumstance. If I'm an unhealthy perfectionist, I'll always be finding fault with myself. Now, another thing which I told someone today, which is very important, is that we are designed to learn through failure. And so failure's not bad if you understand it's normal. According to your ability and knowledge and experience, failing in certain areas is normal. And if you just understand it's normal, you're okay. Like, I remember, you asked me a question in 1986, and somehow I remember this. You were on Sankirtan, and you were having a problem. Maybe you remember. And I said, just do it. What did I say? Just do it because it's service, and don't worry about the result. And you said that helped. That was just like it just released that anxiety. So sometimes we just have to be happy that we did our best. I didn't sell any books, but I know I tried. And so now I'm happy. So being too self-critical is not healthy. And it's not a symptom of Krishna consciousness. It seems like it is, because it seems like, well, if I do something bad, I should feel bad. Feel bad for 5 minutes. Feel bad long enough to realize what you did was wrong and improve it and get inspired to do better. That's fine. I'm not saying you shouldn't feel bad if you do something wrong. But if it goes on and on and on, then it's unhealthy. You're going to do bad things in your life. I'm going to do bad things. We're all going to do bad things. That's, as long as we accept that that's normal because we're works in progress, then we'll be okay with ourselves. As long as we're moving forward, we should be happy. A Brahmin, Manu, in the Manu Samhita, it says, a Brahmin never laments. Who laments? Shudra. Shudra means one who laments. Brahmins don't lament, because whatever is wrong in what they're doing, they're forward-thinking and forward-moving. They don't hang out in the mode of ignorance, because Brahmins are in goodness. That's why they don't lament. Does that make sense? And you have another question. Yes.
I just wanted to thank you for the answer.
That's my 2 cents on self-guilt and self-forgiveness. Yes?
I really liked the question, because I have a similar question like that, but I'm not going to ask that because you just answered it.
Okay.
But I did want to say, what you're talking about, I also obviously have had the experience, not that I was a disciple of Prabhupada, so I went through the experience even more traumatically. Yeah. I experienced 2, gurus that fell down. And so I would like to know, one of them is back and around, and no names here. I don't even want to say anything more than that, so I don't want to say who it is. But I approached them a few years ago, and I tried to get them to, I think when they actually initiated me, they were actually fallen. This was my second initiating guru. And so I tried to say, why did you do that, And he really shrugged me off and was very not humble at all about it. And I really have never felt bitter, because I've always accepted it was my karma for this to happen. I just accepted that this was meant to happen. For some reason or other, it was meant to happen. And I always had faith in Srila Prabhupada. And I even glorified the service that they did. But now I have a problem after approaching him and seeing no humility whatsoever. And it just bewilders me that he can still be, because some of the things that this person did were pretty atrocious. Yeah. And how he can still be around, It's just bewildering to me.
How
How is it that the ISKCON can let him be in charge of certain projects? Okay, so that's one question, and you may even know who I'm talking about. But the other question is I think I know who you're talking about in '86 and who came back, who you saw at Rath Yatra, and I had a talk with him too, and I had a nice talk with him, and I felt some humility from him.
Yeah.
Anyway, so these devotees that are wanting to come back or do service again, you know, it seems to me that there should be some rule, like you were talking about some rules,
you have to
some
be humble.
Apology of some sort.
We have a humility meter, and we're going to evaluate you.
You know, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you something about this person you're talking about, number one person. He's the first one to admit that he's not humble, he's never going to change, and this is how he is, because he's told me that and told other people that. And he's got a service, and Prabhupada gave him that service, and ISKCON is letting him do that service. And he doesn't even pretend to be anything, he just says, this is how I am. In fact, we were at a Disappearance Day festival in Mayapur, and one of our godbrothers gave this amazing talk about Prabhupada. And then the person you're talking about got up on the stage in front of 3,000 people and said, that was a good talk, but my talk's going to be better. And then he said, I'm sorry, this is the way I am. You know, I'm just proud, and I always have been, and I always will be. So it's, you know, we have to accept that. Radha Madan Mohan Ki Jai. So out of, you could say, you know, leadership out of acceptance of all the service he did, the knowledge he had, and the remorse he's gone through, and his clean record in the past so many years. So just engage him, because if he's not engaged, then what? It gets worse. And so it's just, there's something I learned that really helped me when I was doing the marriage workshop. And I was reading a book by a man, he said, different people said the same thing. They said, everyone has a personality type, you know. And so some people's personality type, it's not humble. It's just they, you know, they make big blunders and they don't get humbled by it. It's just how they are. They go on like it never happened. And that's just who they are, and everybody knows they're like that. And so we all have these different personality traits. And so what I learned is, if we can be a little more accepting, it's easier to get along, because you go, that's how he is. And you already know what he's going to do and say in various situations, and it doesn't bother you anymore, because he's just being true to his nature. And for you, it's a more personal issue, obviously, because you were emotionally involved with it. But somehow or other, it's going on, it's working for everyone, and, you know, he's not taking any position in ISKCON other than this one service. He's not taking a position of authority. He doesn't give Bhagavatam class. He's there every day at Mangalarti, but, you know, he is who he is. And I don't, you know, it's not perfect, but I don't know any other way to deal with it without us going crazy. And so a lot of times I think, in dealing with these issues, the first thing is, how can I see without driving myself crazy? Whether or not it's right for the society or other people, but I need to be able to look at it in a way that it doesn't degrade me, because it could degrade me. And I think that's important. And probably if I look at it in a way that doesn't degrade me, it's probably going to be good for him and me and everybody around me. That's my personal, you know, because my feeling, based on spending so many years in ISKCON, is that if we get into too much negativity, we suffer. There's reactions from other people who hear about things we said about them and so forth. And that if we want to do anything positive, even in spite of the negative, we have to remain positive, and we can work our way through that jungle. And if we don't, we get caught up, and then it's a self-created problem. Because everyone who's succeeded in ISKCON somehow or other found a place and a way to be positive in spite of negative things happening around us. And I could tell you horrific stories, because I do a lot of counseling, so I get a lot of bad stuff comes to me. 2 devotees died in the last, these were like disciples of mine. 2 devotees died in the last month, I just heard there's more divorce in ISKCON. You know, one devotee committed suicide. One devotee died of dengue fever. Her husband divorced her because he became a disciple of a guru outside of ISKCON and she didn't want to go. And he, you know, just like one girl got molested during Mangal Artik in the kitchen and got beaten up when she tried to get away. I mean, this is the kind of stuff I'm getting, like, almost every week. Somebody's doing black magic on some devotee, the husband's turning against the wife because of his former wife is envious. I mean, I'm getting it. I don't want to tell you how bad it gets, you know. It's, and sometimes I'll just stop and I'll go, I hate it. I can't stand it. This is such a pure philosophy and a pure society. Look what's happening. And the only recourse that I come to in my own, personally, my own life is, let me do something to make devotees' lives better. And that's the positive thing, and that's what I focus on. Because if I focus on this other stuff, I was in Vancouver. This is not email, this is in front of my eyes. I'm seeing things, devotees complaining, things that really shouldn't happen that way in the Hare Krishna movement in the ideal sense, but they're happening. And I understand why they're happening, and they probably need to happen, but it's difficult when devotees aren't happy. So that's my realization. You know, it's not perfect, and we need to be positive within the midst of the negativity. Otherwise, we succumb to it, and then we won't do anything other than criticize it.
Seems like what I've heard going on lately is there's disciples that, you know, my guru is better than your guru, and I don't want to hear from your guru stuff that's going on. I think I've heard is going on. I don't know.
It's been going on forever, right?
Okay, but I don't come here very often. I'm pretty separated now. But at the same time, you know, I still am on Facebook all day, this and that. And, you know, I think the devotees to be taught a little bit about the Chaitanya Bhagavat and the stories of taking sides and, you know, the whole etiquette of how to be a devotee. And I think you're trying to preach this humility and this forgiveness.
Yeah.
But from the scripture, you know, there's so many examples and stories that if we knew what it would be like to take the side of my guru over your guru and this and that, it's a huge offense.
Yes.
And it's checking our devotional progress.
Well, I think that's a really good point, because that just confirms everything I'm saying. That there it is, right in the scripture. And you go on the internet and you see people making accusations against one another that don't sound like devotees. They sound like very ordinary people. Actually, I read one yesterday, and it really upset me. Because it was covered as a very intellectual and deep, profound statement, but actually it was all about pride. You know, it was, at least to me, said, where is this person coming from? I don't see the humility there. And it's so ironic within our society that it would come out that way, without the proper etiquette and respect. With all due respect, I would beg to offer my opinion. You know, that's different than character assassinations. It's a very awkward and very real. Yes? You want?
Yes, I wondered if you would speak just a little bit more about this idea of forgiveness. And I have some resentments in my own heart as well. And I'm wondering, is it better to work on that forgiveness within your own heart? And sometimes it's not best to approach that person and maybe just let it go? Or is it best to try and manifest that personally face-to-face?
It depends on the relationship, and it depends on the receptivity of the person, but always working it out in your heart is... Then you get to move this. The tall people should sit in the back, or slumber over, like Jagannath Das Babaji. No matter what, you don't want it in your heart because it's contaminating. But whether or not you want to deal with the person, that's not integral to the process. That's a separate decision. Sometimes it makes it worse because they don't feel they did anything. But they don't want to hear about it.
It becomes confrontational.
Yeah, makes it worse. Then it can make it worse for you. If we look at forgiveness as a sattvic quality of goodness. Then we read in Shastra, where Prabhupada said, the first quality of the Brahmins is forgiveness. And resentment is anger. So it's a rajasic, tamasic quality. Right? So naturally the Brahmins will be forgiving because they're in sattva gun. So then if we think, okay, I have justification for not forgiving, but that means keeping me in the mode of passion or ignorance. So the difficulty in forgiving is the justification you have to not forgive. But not forgiving means this is what you're offering the world now, resentment, and you're a devotee. So you're supposed to be offering compassion, kindness, and so forth, and it's not uplifting you, and it's not uplifting anybody else. So I like to think of it in terms, okay, we're devotees, we're supposed to be compassionate. Now what am I giving out to the world? I'm giving more resentment out instead of more compassion. So look at your consciousness, look at your heart. We can all look at our consciousness and heart and think, if everyone in the world had my consciousness and heart, would the world be better or would it be worse? That can be a scary thought, right? Especially it's a scary thought for anybody, but for us I think it's more scary, because we're the ones who are actually supposed to be uplifting the world. And if we think, well, if everyone had let's look at our temple. If everyone had the consciousness that we have together, would the world be better or the world be worse? I hope it would be better. I hope we conclude it would be better. But if we conclude, I'm not sure, that's sad, right? Or if we look at our own consciousness and say, I wouldn't know if the world was better if everyone thought like I thought or felt like I thought. So that's an impetus to realize, no, I am a devotee, I'm a Brahmin, I need to be here. This is where we live. And so we understand that, and we start to let this negative energy, this tamasic energy, we let it go, because it's just keeping us connected with those lower modes. And we want to be at least in sattva, because that's next to Krishna. And if we're in tamagun, we're really far away from Krishna. So holding on to resentment just distances us. Now another nice thought, if you want, I can come back and do a forgiveness workshop here, but I'll give you a little drop of some nectar that's really wonderful. In the Jaiva Dharma, which is a book written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, which contains all the essences of Krishna consciousness explained exquisitely and clearly and deeply. He said that bhakti is made up of 3 elements. Like khichdi is made up of rice, dal, and what? Spice? Rice, dal, and veggies. 4 elements and spices. 5, and ghee. Or oil, or whatever. I like it with ghee, if you make it for me. So, he said bhakti is made up of 3 elements. So if you don't have rice, dal, and sabji, you don't have khichdi. If you don't have humility, compassion, and forgiveness, you don't have bhakti. So he explained how it works, which is very interesting. He said that when you have love of Krishna, simultaneously, the same emotion that goes to Krishna, when it goes to everyone else, becomes compassion. So bhava is the love you have for Krishna, and compassion is the love you have for everybody else. It's the same emotion, but its object is different. So to Krishna it's love, and that same love that goes to Krishna, the same emotion directed towards the living entity, is compassion. And then he said, the humility of a devotee is that he doesn't react when people harm him because he thinks, I'm not that important, that on my account I should hurt anybody. Because that's what humility means. I'm not special. I'm going to hurt you because you hurt me. Am I that special? And then he says also, because he understands the other person is struggling in the material world, so his humility is not to push a person down who's already really down. We're already really down. Then he said something really nice. He said, when you take humility and compassion and mix them together in a little pot, forgiveness comes out. So that's why he said forgiveness is also integral to bhakti. So I felt personally for me, when I understood this, and I never understood this before, I thought forgiveness was like an optional, do it if you can. If you can't, just keep chanting, But here he's saying, no, it's integral, and it's what happens when there's compassion and humility. So I found that very powerful, that it's not just what gets you to bhakti, it's not just sattva gun quality, it is bhakti. And understanding that can be a real impetus. Now there's one more thing that's really nice. It brings it to a similar level. One devotee had an issue with forgiveness. She didn't go to my workshop, but she lived in Mayapur and she was taking her issue to Bhaktivedanta Purna Swami. So I said, tell me what he says. I want to hear his perspective. And he said something very simple, but very powerful and very profound. He said, do it because it will please Krishna. And that's what bhakti is all about. If there's no other way you can do it, that's it. This is because this will please Krishna. Do it. I hate this person. I want to get back. I want to take revenge. Or like in your case, self-forgive. Forgive because it'll please Krishna, because it'll bring you closer. So if you forgive, you'll come closer to Krishna. And he wants you to do it, so do it to please him. And that we can say that for anything that we're struggling with. Why should I do it? Do it because it'll make Krishna happy. And that's what bhakti is about. It's not about you. It's not about, I want to hold on to this. No, it's not about you. It's about what does Krishna want you to do. So that's the philosophical side, not so much the psychological side. But you can think like that and see if it helps. Yes?
Do the microphones work? Okay.
This one works.
Okay, here we go. I read this one time quite a few years ago. I thought it was pretty interesting that a South American tribe, how they deal with someone who's done something transgressive, like stealing or something. And what it was the person that stole, what they would do is they'd put them in a circle, and everybody in the group, everyone in the village, would say 3 things that they liked or loved about this person. So
Wow.
Everyone in the whole group had to say something, 3 things that they loved about this person, that they appreciated about this person who just stole or did something else. And how much it transformed that person
Wow.
that did the transgression. And I think something like that would be pretty cool. And it's gone on the GBC level. Like for example, Prabhu Vishnu Swami. What if everyone said to Prabhu Vishnu Swami,
Yeah,
let me tell you how fantastic you were back in 1995 when you did this. And can you imagine if everyone said that to him? Yeah. Would you think he would have gone back to Thailand? Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hari Bol. Very nice. I want to tell you something to make you happy. We did this in Vancouver. We had a workshop on community building and relationships. And I told the devotees, and I mentioned this I think in Intel or at Google, that when do we glorify devotees? If you have an official appreciation day, and you have to, there's no choice. So you don't even like the person perhaps, but you have to say something nice. And then when they die. And outside of that, nobody says anything nice, generally. So I told the devotees, okay, now what we're going to do, and we did this in the workshop, I said, now what you're going to do, there's 25 devotees, I said, you're going to get up and we're going to spend about 20 minutes and you're going to go to every person and just appreciate them. Even the ones you don't appreciate. And everybody was very happy after we did that. And I thought, like you're thinking, I thought, we need to do more of this. Not officially, because this is not official. You're one-on-one. It's like, it's just you. You're not acting for anybody, making believe that, you actually genuinely have to find something you appreciate from your heart. Not like, oh, I like your new designer glasses. Something about the very essence of that person. Not what they wear, I appreciate the fact you're here every Sunday doing the dishes. I see that and it inspires me. Something like that. So I love this point you made. It's fantastic. Because what I've realized is there's 2 energies always flowing, one that's taking us up and one that's taking us down. So all the appreciation and all the service to one another, it always moves everything up for the other person and for us. And the criticism and gossip and blaming it moves everything down. And so we're trying to move our movement forward, we're trying to move ourselves forward, and that just holds us back. And Krishna is not happy with it. And it's not Krishna consciousness. That's the whole point. How are we allowing things which aren't Krishna consciousness to enter in our organization? We have to somehow keep it out, whether it's by rules and regulations, is by continual preaching about these subjects, somehow we have to keep it out. It's very important for us and for spreading Krishna consciousness. And the first place we need to keep it out is our homes. Because negative talk, arguing, criticism is toxic in the family. It's the worst thing we can do. It's so bad. You don't realize how bad it is until you stop doing it. Yes, someone back there had a question, comment? Yes. We'll give you a microphone.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Jai Haribol.
I really liked what you talked about fiction. Opportunity given by the Lord. Hone your humility, practice forgiveness, hone tolerance and patience. But as you already know, human beings tend to overcompensate and undercompensate. All those qualities being utopia. Whenever you feel that there is friction and you've conceded a lot of territory, you tend to justify your behavior. And the other extreme is to avoid the friction and always concede.
Yes.
So how do you personally practice being in that middle perfect zone and not overcompensating or undercompensating?
I wish I had, I have all these CDs of lectures, and somehow or other I didn't realize I was going to be here with all of you, and I didn't bring them. But I have one series of lectures called Balance. Because really it's about balance. And I think what you're also referring to is conditioned behaviors that we picked up growing up or picked up in other lifetimes that cause us to maybe overreact or underreact. And a lot of what we need to do is just look at our own nature and see what's wrong with it, what's out of balance, and try to work on ourselves and fine-tune it. Because the thing you have to realize is that the problem is not when you're having friction with your wife. The problem started long ago. That's just the manifestation in that particular situation. That's just bringing it out. And if you understand that, then you can work on yourself. You understand what the problem is. You can work on yourself in a way that you want to become, you want to heal from that. Because as I said, a lot of that is learned behavior, which is wrong. And it's probably, I would guess, can you? Thank you. I would guess, if you look back at your life, you probably did the same thing when you were a kid in situations like that. And, you didn't want to confront it, or then you retreated, and then at some point it built up, and then you exploded. And if that is the case, then you say, okay, here's a pattern, and I haven't dealt with it, and I'm an adult now, and I need to work on this. Does that make sense? Because most of the adult behaviors that we find out of balance are behaviors we learned as children that we haven't changed. And then it's really bad when you're married. See, one of the things that I realized early on in marriage is that if those things aren't healed, it's not really fair for your spouse, because they have to deal with a little kid sometimes, not an adult, and we need to mature more out of respect for our partners. Yes. Thank you. Yes, Prabhuji.
Dhanavad Pranam, Prabhuji. I was wondering if, these qualities are not manifesting of forgiveness, humility. Should we actually look at our basics of devotional service?
Good question.
Because maybe we are just cruising through our chanting, our hearing process. Yeah. Maybe we are not taking it with that much seriousness or attention. Yeah. Because these things, chanting and hearing, are supposed to bring forth these qualities.
Okay, he asked a very good question, and there's two answers to it, and the answers are slightly different. What you said is true, but there's another answer. You're making the point that maybe I'm not executing devotional service well, so it's not really happening. I got it externally. I got the walk, got the right cool bead bag, I got the cool kurta, you know, got the right neck beads, and I know how to put on tilak really well. But I'm not really doing the process, so I'm not really getting the result, and that's true. But there's something else. Prabhupada said, first be conscious, then be Krishna conscious. So there's also that area where you're trying to build your spiritual life perhaps on a foundation that's not healthy in terms of your character, your psychology, your relationships and so forth, that you also need to work on. And sometimes when you don't work on it, your spiritual practice actually could make you worse, because you could become fanatical, out of balance, very inflexible, more so than before you were a devotee, more judgmental. Because I always tell devotees, I say, look before you're a devotee, there's not so many things to judge people on. When you become a devotee, you've got a list of like 3,469 things from Hari Bhakta Vilas that you can judge others on, right? So we have the tendency to be more judgmental because there's more to judge. So I think it's worth understanding that if I am not a little more accepting and I come into a spiritual society, I'm a judgmental person, I'm probably going to get worse. If I'm an inflexible person, I'm probably going to become more inflexible. If I'm a rigid person, I'm probably going to become more rigid. So what you said is true, but this is also the other part of it. And you might say, well, shouldn't that take care of itself if I become Krishna conscious? Not necessarily. A lot of those things need to be addressed independently. And that's why Prabhupada said, first be conscious, then be Krishna conscious, so you don't build a foundation on something which is weak. Now, interestingly enough, I met a man on Monday night. I was in Washington. We did a program, Tuesday night, and he does men's groups, and he really liked what I was talking about. And he came to me and he said, do you find that when you give people spiritual knowledge, if they're not grounded materially, it creates problems? And I said, yeah, sometimes it's dangerous. He said, yes, thank you for that. I see that all the time. People have, they get all fanatic about spiritual life, and they don't know how to handle it. Because they're not balanced, they start hating women, they start becoming horrible husbands, all this stuff, because they're not grounded. And then, today at the program, another person asked me the same question. He goes, I have friends that are spiritual, but they're more selfish than other people. And some of them have done really horrible things. What's going on? So I said, look at Islam, look at the history of Christianity, mass murders in the name of God. So that's just my experience. I can't say it's for everybody true, but I think for many people that there's a level of their life they need to sort out. Now, okay, I'll tell you something, and it'll help us understand this, but it's depressing, so don't cry in the temple, please. We did a marriage workshop in Bangalore, and my wife facilitated the women, I facilitated the men, and some exercise. And she said most of the women were unhappy in their marriages because their husbands weren't really kind and emotionally supportive. And then I talked to the men, and I saw the men were a little too demanding, in my opinion, and a little too strict, and a little too top-heavy, I'm right, you're wrong type thing. And then in Seattle, I did a workshop on marriage, but all the men who came to the workshop were new to Krishna consciousness, where the men in Bangalore were older. And the men who were new to Krishna consciousness were much more flexible, much kinder. The women had many less complaints than the men as devotees. So that's an example of when you put, husband's guru on top of a guy who's really wants to control. You see what happens? You got a problem. And we see this manifest many times. And so I think that's what Prabhupada means by first be conscious, then be Krishna conscious. You have to be careful when you're taking in philosophy that you're grounded enough to apply it. When Prabhupada said husband means guru, what does guru do? Guru serves his disciple. What do you think it means? She should do what I say. That's not what Prabhupada meant. But that's what happens when you put it in the ears of someone who's not grounded and balanced. The grounded and balanced, the person will read that and go, oh, that means I take care of my wife, because the guru takes care. The ungrounded person thinks, oh, I'm the dictator. And if she doesn't do what I say, get out of the house. Yes?
I was just going to say the conscious Also, Prabhupada also said we should all be gentlemen. You know, Prabhupada used that term a lot, gentlemen. And I was also thinking about coming to the mode of goodness, you know, and we're talking about coming to the mode of goodness before we can come to pure goodness.
Exactly, exactly. And it's necessary, yeah. I think that's be conscious also means that. Come to goodness, yeah. Strong foundation. She has the mic, so we'll let her
I have a mic, yeah. I wanted to ask, how do we deal with people who have lower consciousness in life, who doesn't see really deeper meaning in life, who just goes after simple pleasures? How do
relatives or people friends or
relatives on a daily basis? How do we really deal with them?
Well, there's a couple of things, but the first thing I want to say, and Prabhupada said this, and I just heard him say it a few days ago. Someone asked a similar question, and Prabhupada said, "You can't do anything." That was a general answer to make the point that if they don't want it, and he was saying, look they're animals. One time they said, Prabhupada, you know, there are people in the airport that they get our books and then they look at them and they throw them in the trash. And there are workers at the airport, they don't want us to be there. So they tell people, give me the book, you don't like it, and they rip it up. So they're telling him that, and he said, well, what do you expect? They're killing their babies in the womb. So there was that side of Prabhupada. It's like, well, what do you expect from these people? This is how they are. Nothing can help them, so to speak. And then the other side is you. What's your conscience? So your influence on them based on your advancement in Krishna consciousness, your compassion, your prayer to Krishna to give you intelligence, how to deal with them, how to help them. It really comes from our desire. We want so the other side of Prabhupada saying we want to make the whole world Krishna conscious, right? Sri Radha Madan Mohan ki jai.
Krishna. Sorry, it's getting a little late, so I'm sure like many devotees have many questions to ask, but children are getting a little tired, and they're participating as well. So I'd like to thank His Grace Mahatma Prabhu for kindly coming here to ISV and giving us your association.
If you can all do whatever you want to do, and those who still have questions, I'll stay here.
They can stay back.
You have to sit on the rug if you have questions. Yeah. And mahatmadas.com if you want to stay in touch.
And like to, you have very unique and insightful perspective of Krishna consciousness, so I'm sure everyone is benefiting from that and take more association as you come. His Grace Vaishnav has conveyed his million koti dandot pranams to you, and thank you very much for coming here in San Jose, your home, original home from 1970s.
Hare Krishna.
And actually Mahatma Prabhu has taken many corporate seminars. He has given seminar on Cisco, and Intel, almost 200 people attended from different places, Oregon, Chandler, Arizona, then Folsom, Santa Clara, and right now this evening he had a session in Google. So Mahatma Prabhu had some seminar on Friday evening, actually in Mexico. He cancelled that and he came here. So I'd like to thank you very much. And please, and please come more often, as much as possible. Whenever you're going this side, please stop by here.
You organize the workshop and I show up. If you all want to do it, I'll come because, if I'm in Tijuana and I'm supposed to be in San Diego, so then we can come here.
I'd like to have some nursing arti before we kind of conclude. And
Nishinga Artik or Nishinga Kirtan?
Nishinga Kirtan.
Oh, no. You have a Nishinga deity? Separate? Oh, okay. Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Pralada Lada Dayane. Hiranyakasi Purvakshaha. Yashilatan kana kalaye Tanishinga bharato nishingo Jato jatayami tato nishinha Bahi nishinga redaye nishingo Narashinga madin sharanam prapadye Tavakara kamalabare Nakamabhutta Shingham Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanubringham Bolo Eshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Tavakara Kamala Bare Nakam Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Nisinghadev 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 Jai Nisinghadev 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 Jai Nisinghadev Jai Nisinghadev Jai Nisinghadev Jai Nisinghadev Haribo Shri Nisingha Bhagavan ki jai Bhakti Maharaj ki jai Nitai Gaurapamanande. Now what happens? Oh, prasadam, huh? What? You want me to chant the prayer? We have any Bengalis here? Yeah. Let the Bengalis chant. Where? The two Bengalis, you want to chant together? I'm a Bengali also, I can chant with you. Sharira Abhijajal. Okay, go ahead. Yeah. All right, let's hear it from the Bengalis. Sharira Abhijajal
Jadendriyo Tahekal
Jatendriya Tahekal
Jive Shayo Shagore
Jive Pele Vishayo Shagore
Tari Modhe Jivayoti
Dharamajje Jivayati
Lobho Mashudur
Loba Mashudhurmati
Take Tita Koti Shangsha
Sakideta Kotina Shangshare Krishna Badhodhoya Moy Kori Bhara Jiva Joy Swaprashad Anilo Bhai Se Anamrita Pao, Radha Krishna Guna Gao,
Dako,
Prema Deko, Sri Chaitanya Nitai, Jai Mahaprasad Ki Jai,
Jai.
Jai Gopama, Hari Hari Bo. So, if anyone has any questions, you have to sit here and eat prasadam next to me.
Never see you, Prabhuji.
Okay. Jai Nimai Nitai.
For those who have joined us online, thank you so much for joining us. We are going to end the broadcast in a moment. Thank you.